Alright, everybody, welcome to another live cast here on the Game Wisdom channel. I am still Josh Beiser, and we have another great discussion as I start playing around, as it seems like Discord and OBS like to screw up my whole template here, but let me get that hopefully going here. But while I'm getting things going, our topic for tonight is going to be talking about the mobile game market and mobile games. And my guest is a developer who has certainly worked in the trenches with it. And he's currently doing the Kickstarter for the game Bound by Blades, which is his attempt at elevating mobile games. And he certainly has a lot to say about that. So please welcome to the cast, Justin Thompson. How are you doing, Justin?
I'm good. How about you?
I am doing great. And I am also very busy these days. How about you?
Definitely very busy.
So, while I'm getting things situated on this end, for those of you watching, we already did a cast with Justin recorded on Game Wisdom. You'll find a link to that in the description below for those of you watching this live. Oh, I'm sorry, for those of you watching this recorded. But for the people who are live, could you very quickly just kind of go over your background and kind of like where you've been in the mobile game market?
Yes, so for my background, I started, I guess, 9 years ago today. So it was in the mobile games, it was TikTok games. I started out as a QA tester, where we did smaller mobile games. Back then, it was not so monetized. Instead, it was like $1 purchases, really simple. The mobile industry was just starting out. We worked through different mobile games, mostly as a third-party developer. So publishers of different brands and stuff would hire us out. And so we worked on games for multiple years. We made our own indie game during that, Adventures of Pip, which was really cool. And then we made, after that, we had one huge hit of Bubble Shooter, which is a match 3 subgenre. With this, it blew up. So after that, we worked in mobile games for 4 years directly. All of them were bubble shooters. So clones, rebrands, and the only focus behind them was monetization. They were not created for any other reason.
And for the new people watching, when did you first start coming up with the idea for Bound by Blades?
So that was right when I started as a QA tester. So when I was stuck testing mobile games like every single day on these different devices, and I was like, all right, these are okay, they're kind of flawed. It's like, but I want to play them. I don't want to play them. And so I was like, all right, so I want to play like my own type of game. I think mobile could be a platform. So I was like, all right, how do I make this fun? I was playing Monster Hunter, like the old Monster Hunters, I think like Freedom Unite 2. And it's like, I was playing those, like, how do I bring Monster Hunter to mobile? And so I came up with, like, all right, most mobile games have these really bad digital buttons on the screen, or you're, like, trying to press buttons is really difficult. Pressing the wrong ones, you're struggling, you're staring at the screen to find out where to press. I was like, all right, we're just going to, like, simplify it to a nice, easier design that you can actually use to look at, without actually focusing on just the buttons, but actually on the battle. And a lot of mobile games, again, were simple in the fact that you did not get to... I guess they're just simple in the fact that you just spam buttons. You basically spam attacks. Hey, you win, congratulations. It's a very unstrategic. I was like, so I wanted to focus more on how to get the Monster Hunter style, with like actual battles that you have to block, you have to defend, you have to be prepared for what they're doing. And you'll have your time to attack, but you're also going to be animation locked. So it gives you a lot of strategic depth without making it reflex based.
Yeah. And as we talked about on the previous cast, trying to elevate mobile games in the market has been very much an uphill battle. And for my followers watching this right now, we've had multiple casts with Ramin Shokazard, who is a game design or He's a game economist, and he's been studying and talking about mobile games and the mobile market for years now. And we've certainly seen kind of like the rise of mobile games and mobile design going in that direction, like you said, of the clones, of heavily
Hmm.
marketed. And I'm hoping the stream actually stays stable, just like kind of cut out for a second. So fingers crossed. I think on the safe side, I'm going to record as well while we're talking, just in case things start to dip or go out. You never know these
Okay.
days. But as we were saying, like there's always been a lot of people who are trying to get into mobile games to begin with wanted to, or we saw this idea of making a platform for everybody. You know, something that anyone could play. It was going to be a new set of things, and instead, it kind of went in this different direction. So I've certainly spoke about this at length. I know where me and we've had multi-hour discussions, but this is the first time we have a mobile developer on who's been in the trenches himself. So I wanted to ask you, like what has it been like trying to make it in the mobile game industry?
Oh, this is
This could be an hour right here.
yeah. I just did a Reddit MMA. A lot of it was on this like exact topic. It's like I'm trying to think where to start. This is actually all right. So I'll say when we started becoming like our first hit, that was I think I want to avoid saying any names of the games just in case we talk about like their strategies, so I can freely talk about those instead. But you can look into TikTok games background, you'll find all the games. Um, so our first big hit was one of the bubble shooters. It became like top 100, top 50. It hit all the charts. This didn't happen until about 6 months after it was built. This was trying to think of what I can and cannot say. I'm just trying to avoid saying the exact brand and names.
Mm-hmm.
So this started off, to me, I was a level designer at the time. So I didn't know much about any of these games. This was new to me. Like all of our games were more or less uh, actual honest games. Even on mobile, it was like $1. We had like a cute little game called Pug Run. You pay for like $1. You had some games with microtransactions. I think Pug Run had it in one of the versions, but it was like people would pay like a few dollars a max. There was no whales. Like the concept, in at least in our games, wasn't there yet.
And
We hit.
I'm
Oh,
sorry,
sorry.
just to clarify, and this was what year? Was this 2012, 2013, or a little bit later than
Um,
that?
so Pug Run and stuff was around like 2012,
Okay.
I think. So it would have been, yeah, a few years in, and then our first bubble shooter probably would have been 2013, 2014.
Mm-hmm.
The market advanced pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
So with that first game, we we monetized off of I guess all of the bubble shooters work the exact same. They're all clones, so whatever I say is pretty much all one for all. Our monetization mainly focused on second chance purchases. So this is where we get into the dirty works. I was a level designer, so I was taught everything, and I knew all the analytics, the randomization. For people who think it's rigged, match threes, it's absolutely rigged. I'll give you all the juicy details right here. So with bubble shooters for us, our concept was to design a fun, enjoyable level, no matter which level it is. You would have like you'd have lots of fun, you have enough bubbles, get through all the way to the top. And on the top, the bubbles are randomized with a low percentage, usually whatever we determine the percent of the level rate to be. Usually, I'll talk about it in a second so I don't get distracted. But these are like a 1 out of 10 chance to become a color you want. So at the start of the level, you don't even know if you're going to have it. I think some levels scroll through, but you don't really get a good chance at seeing if you have the right randomization up there. But it's predetermined whether you can win or lose on the start of the level. And you cannot restart a level for most of these games because they rig it so if you leave or restart, it automatically charges you that life.
Mm-hmm.
Further into that, your bubble count is mostly not randomized. People usually complain about it like, oh, they're giving me the wrong colors. It's not really working that way. It's truly just at the end, you can't do anything but need the same color like 2 times in a row to get that 3 strike.
Mm-hmm.
And getting one is like 1 out of 6 or 1 out of 5 chances. Sometimes we just use four colors as well, but it's a very, very low chance. So if you need like 2 bubbles of the same color, that's what 8 bubbles to go through. And you only have like 3 to 5 bubbles at that time. Um, so further into that, I'm sorry if you want me to change topics from like what we're doing, or I can change, but I can continue on this as well.
Um, let's talk a little bit more, and then we'll move more talking about like the market itself.
Okay, so on this, um, I kind of dropped where I was. I have like a 5 second memory here.
About the chance of it spawning the bubble that the player would need to finish a level.
Okay, so yes, I was gonna jump into whales after that.
Okay.
So this we'll jump into the addiction factor, impulse purchases. This is what one of the games that we worked on did, was impulse purchase. We relied on people with impulsive behavior to purchase our bubble shooter or our bubbles the second chance. You run out, you're at the end of the level because you rigged the end of the level, so you get there, make sure you feel like you're almost there, feel like you're, oh yeah, just a few more bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
And then we give this, you run out, you get this pop up, hey, buy more bubbles, really happy face,
Mm-hmm.
yay. And it's like, oh, just pay with these coins that you already have, maybe. And also, that impulse number I'm talking about, we have a fake timer ticking down: nine,
Oh
eight,
no.
seven, six, five, four, three, two, zero. It's fake. You hit zero, nothing happens. We literally built it only to exploit players. I'll just jump into some other like crazy exploitative stuff. On another game we worked on, the rating system for the store, it's also rigged.
Oh.
So it's also like part of the store is also why I'm against Epic, is because I think they're trying to like copy what the mobile market stores are doing, which is the scariest damn thing I can think of. But for the mobile market, what our bubble shooter did, we created a fake, like an in-game rate this game system. You rate like 3 stars or less, we send you like to some help part. And if you rate 4 stars or more, you go to the store and you can rate that game. So it's like, oh, you rated 3 or less, you're not getting sent to the store. We're just gonna send the good people there. It's so rigged. Like everything about the mobile market is maximal exploit. It's disgusting. It's why I'm working in those games. It's like I'm not a mobile game player, but I needed to give something back to those players. It's like I'm building you something amazing here. I'm going to build this with no IAP, no monetization, none of those tactics. I'm gonna give it to you with like a good price. One price, that's it. It's like my hope is that like there can be like a revolution of actual good devs to build up an industry on like mobile, and even in regular games as the mobile stuff goes to them, to just like shut down them. It's like, hey, do you want to buy this loot box game, or do you want to buy this actual good game that's like an indie game? And they just are like, oh yeah, I played this game, it was fun, I'll just try another indie game. And I'm hoping that can become something more popular within like mobile,
Mm-hmm.
because right now it's like there's no trust. There's absolutely no
Yeah.
trust. um oh, you can go ahead if you want.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, and that's one of the things like coming at from a console and kind of more on the hardcore side of things. Like my audience right now, my regulars watching this live or recorded, they are predominantly PC gamers as well as the console side, and a lot of them just don't like mobile games for multiple reasons. And one of the big ones again is that lack of trust. And we've said, or we've spoken about this many times on the cast, that once the consumer gets in their mind that something is rigged or it could be rigged, then it just completely loses their favor. And we've seen this in the AAA side with stuff like Battlefield, or no, Star Wars Battlefront, the EA Take Two kind of thing, where they'll introduce gotcha and loot boxes and more along those lines, and then it's like, can I really trust a developer that these elements are really just ancillary, or are they really part of the experience? And 9 times out of 10, yes, the game has been modified or altered in a way to get you to spend that money. And once you start thinking like that, it just becomes very hard to convince somebody to play those games otherwise.
Exactly. That's like right now we're at the step one. The step one is speaking about it, launching a game, and that is the most difficult step because you cannot be trusted at the step. No matter what I do, I
Mm-hmm.
cannot be trusted until I release this game and prove that there is no monetization, no tactics behind it, no sketchy data stealing, selling,
Mm-hmm.
none of that. Like no DRM, letting like it's like even for like a piracy, I'm okay with people pirating our game. I'm not against them. People don't always have money. It's like I still want them to be able to play. If my like I'm not against that. I'm against like exploiting people.
Mm-hmm.
Like pirates, they probably won't even like buy the game. It's like that's fine. Have fun with the game, great. That's good with me. It's like I just don't want to exploit the people. Like I identify as a player before I identify as a dev. Like even when I worked at the old company, it's like all the roles I worked in, I still felt like a player because I still play games every day. And like I just watched like from the mobile market all these crazy things coming in, and then you see the AAA games coming in. You start playing those. Like the game that really flipped me crazy about this whole like thing was I played the Fortnite PvE alpha, which
Mm-hmm.
was $40 buy-in. The core gameplay was fun. That's why the BR version is fun. But this was before BR. The
Mm-hmm.
game was so disgusting. It was worse than most of the mobile games I've developed or worked on. Worse, like way worse. It had the llamas for loot boxes, but the elements of the weapons had like 6 different pieces, 6 different rerolls on them. Half of them were like broken, not
Mm-hmm.
even working. And like I was even on their forums and like begging them like, hey, do you like this list? I've worked in mobile games. You want to do it like this to be more legitimate, treat your players fairly. They ignored us. 1 month later, they put out Tim Sweeney put out like a press report, some announcement that Fortnite, that PvE version, was going to be their top grossing game ever. And then like a few months later was BR. And it's like, and now like people love it. I'm like, I'm scared. I'm scared
Mm-hmm.
if Epic becomes big.
Yeah.
It's the gaming community really needs to understand that it's a lot more than just a launcher and all of that. It's actually mobile games being given to the developers. More power is not a good sign for players. It's
Mm-hmm.
very scary.
And again, it's just a very tricky topic for everyone involved because while Steam has been the dominant platform, Steam has not exactly been, the golden child as well over these past few years.
Right.
And it's kind of like that situation of, who's the best of the worst rather than who's
Mm,
the best of the best.
yes. Um, even even more recently with indies, the Steam change hurt even us directly.
Mm-hmm.
We used to have a lot of impressions, and now we have very few. Steam used to be great, so I don't know which angle they're really targeting here, but it's very. Um, I think they're not awful, but they're not perfect. Epic, I do fear like Steam still brings like new features for the players
Mm-hmm.
when they're already in like the top, the lead. There's still like the Linux stuff going on, so they're still doing some good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if we put Epic in the shoes that Steam is in, I fear for the worst. What would
Mm-hmm.
be like? What would Tim be doing if he's willing to buy exclusives when he's low? He's gonna have so much more money when he's big. Why would he not like take the biggest games and keep them on his platform?
Mm-hmm.
That I would completely believe that he would do all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, like when we look at it from the developer side, there are developers who see it as pretty much the only way to guarantee that their game could have even a chance at being successful if they're being bought, for that 1 year exclusivity. And like this is like the big problem with this that we'll never know how well they were going to do. And that's always, and like we could certainly, if we start talking about marketing in games general, that's another 2 hours on this cast. But like, we'll never know what they were able to actually do, because once they've announced that Epic Games partnership, that completely changed the entire marketing. It changed the entire conversation. So those games that did do that, they could have succeeded on their own, but we'll never know. But likewise, they could have just failed and collapsed. And
Yep.
as Oscar's saying in chat, like, competition is ultimately good, but again, it depends on who's competing. And we still don't know, at least from this side, where this is all going to shake up in the next year or so.
Yep. It's like things like GOG. I am very hopeful that they continue with keeping like a player focused strategy. Like they just released that launcher, which is really nice for players with different launchers. I really do hope they keep to like an honest standard. They're I do wish I don't know how to really bring more like top tier games to them. I know indies like to go to them. For us, I would like to go to them. I do fear what will happen with the multiplayer aspect, because if we have to tie in with Steam, we'd have to tie in with another store, and then connection between them, is that going to be possible? Is that
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I can't tell that's on my end or on Justin's end. Test. Can you guys still hear me, at least? Uh-oh. Epic heard us talking. Okay. It doesn't seem like it's on my end, at least knock on wood. See, you talk bad about Epic and Comcast comes after us. Oh. Am I still going here? Let's see. Yeah, I'm still at least moving, right? They heard him. Let me send him a message to see what's going on. Hopefully his computer didn't overheat like Ramin's. Let's see. Mm-mm. Oh no. Alright. I'm going to cut the call and I'm going to rejoin and see if that helps. Let's see. Let's see if this will work.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. That honestly seems a little sketchy, because I watched that video perfectly fine. Like nothing cut out, nothing froze. I was still talking like the whole time, and you're just like saying hello. Are you okay?
Oh no. Yeah, that's. We were saying like Epic is watching us right now, just like Comcast watches me during my streams.
I might have some worries there.
But I guess getting back to it, and again, like that's always been that worry about who is competing. You mentioned GOG earlier, and like they were just like trying, like they've never seemed to have been trying to, I guess, make any waves in a manner of speaking. Like the store's been good, they've earned a lot of respect from gamers, but they never seem to want to take that step into, I guess, going with the big boys like Ubisoft and EA have done.
I think that comes down to DRM issues. Because I believe they're 100% non-DRM. Excuse me. But like they I think that's what a lot of AAA's fear is pirates. Like they add such strong DRM that they would not want to go on GOG, that to be just non DRM. I would prefer that GOG lets, like, I know there's strict policy against DRM. To me personally, like I'm not gonna add DRM to my game. I don't mind if there's DRM on other games. Multiplayer online only is terrible. Let's not go there. But like whatever's minimal thing like Steam does, I don't have an issue with that. So if that's like all it takes to get like AAA to go to GOG, so players have another platform to choose from, and GOG still tries to does the best for players and offer as many like DRM free games as it can, I think that would probably be a good step, but I could be wrong. Um, that'd be my personal hope, but I can understand people against DRM too, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like with Steam itself, like as we've seen, they pretty much have put themselves as, we don't really care what happens on our platform as long as we're making money. Like, we're going to give you features, we're going to give you everything that you need to make your game successful. But if you're asking us to promote your game, or or you're asking us to kind of help you, it's like, no, do your own thing. And like this has been, like, I think one of like the big contentious points about Steam is that, again, like as you were saying earlier, that you were starting back in 2012. Like that was still during the era of Steam's absolute dominance. Like back then, you were on Steam, that's basically you making it Hollywood, or you're on Broadway, or anything like that. And again, like for my older fans, we've heard the stories of you had to know somebody who knows somebody who knew somebody at Valve some days to get on the Steam back then. And when they opened up, it's always been this kind of like Pandora's box of features for consumers, in a way hurting the developers in a sense. Like, I forget who mentioned it earlier, but the idea of getting refunds for games. That was an amazing thing for the consumers, one thing a lot of people talk about for some time. But it's also, in a way, have hurt developers. And the same thing as we've seen with the whole Epic Games and Steam fight. That, yes, Epic's getting free games and they're doing all this buying and buying stuff out. It's like, okay, that's great for one side, but it's hurting the other group. And it just seems like one of those crazy issues of, what's that old saying of the thing from like that movie Alien vs. Predator, no matter who wins, we lose kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's like one thing we have to do with our Kickstarter build, our demo, is we're not allowed to have even the word Kickstarter mentioned in our demo. For Itch and GameJolt, you can play our demo. You'll see like link now on Kickstarter. We can't have that on Steam. I was like declined a few times.
Really?
And they were just like, "Oh, this is a donation. If you want donations, you have to use our system and have them donate through the game through Steam instead," which was like, ouch, because donations through Steam are not going to help our Kickstarter fund. They're not going to help our game fund. That I don't want to take money unless the game is actually going to be real. So there's definitely the negative sides on Steam. For the player refunds, I love that feature. It's a necessity. I truly believe in more player focused support rather than dev focused. If like I want to like my focus on developing games, because right now a lot of developers are forward developers. They want to sell out games. They want to bring the games to, hey, yeah, we want to make lots of money. We made this great game. Here, buy it. But I want to be like, no, let's do it for the players. Let's do a little bit better. So I'm more with Steam standards in terms of refunds. I'm totally good with people playing our game. It's unique. Like if you don't like it and you can get a refund, that's great. Like I want players who like the game to play it. We aren't going to be a buggy, destroyed, awful game, which I think a lot of developers were before. And with a refund feature, now they have to actually pick up what they're doing and can't slack off. I think it's important.
Now, speaking about changes to like the market and everything, I definitely want to get your thoughts on what just happened. I want to say 2 weeks ago with the Apple Arcade. and kind of like their idea of having both a curated system for mobile games, but also allowing it kind of like that subscription model. So you spend $5 a month, you get access to whatever games are available. You stop paying, those games go away. But then there aren't any more, at least from what I've seen. There's no in-game monetizations, no gotchas, loot boxes, pay to win, pay to wait. Again, we if Ramin was here, we could just start listing various phrases here.
Yep. I actually really, really, really like the idea behind Apple Arcade. I love the subscription fee. I love the low price because mobile players are not going to be willing to go for a high price. I love the fact that there's no in-game monetization. The games are actually legitimate, good, high quality. There's like actual curation behind the games instead of just oh, this is an app. We put it on the store. Here, play it. There's a million IAP. It's going to exploit you to the maximum it can. That's what the majority of mobile games are. That's why I like Apple Arcade. On the other end, exclusivity is a deal breaker, at least for us. We have fans on Android. Even if we don't even have that many fans, I promise game on Android, I promise on iOS, I promise on PC. I know Apple Arcade is only for one single mobile, so you can do other platforms. You just can't do Android. But to us, that's a deal breaker. It's like I wish they had more opening. Maybe like a lesser profit from them would be nice. But I couldn't take their deal if like we had one. It's like to me, it's the same idea of going to Epic exclusive. It's like you're an Android player and like I promised you this game for all this time, and then it's like, oh yeah, now we're on iOS only, and you've been playing the demo. You had fun. You gave us feedback. You gave us bugs. You gave us all this work you did, and now we just say no, you're not supported anymore. That's heartbreaking. That's the biggest anti-player. I mean, sure, like if our Kickstarter fails, it's gonna put us in a bad spot. It would put us like, oh yeah, Apple Arcade would still take us. That's great. And then it's like, yeah, but I'm not even willing to do that because I am literally only going to work on this game as long as it's player focused. That's my whole like stigma behind this game is to make it player focused at zero cost to the player. I'm not going to screw over our audience because this is step one. It's the hardest step. If we can do this legitimately, then every single step later is easier. Everybody will trust us and we'll be able to keep that honest business from day one to day whatever. Hopefully we like work out forever, but that's my goal here. Like you have to be very, very strict with your game, with the like rules behind it. You cannot become a public company. You cannot have like a large percentage of investors. There's so many like steps you have to avoid to make it something workable, but like it's the same idea back to like Apple Arcade. It's step one. If you are willing to take that one single deal on something you really need, you're going to be in that same boat later on in your business.
Yeah. And yeah, like for myself, what I do with Game Wisdom and the YouTube channel, it's the same thing with trying to be respectable in terms of how I operate and what I do. And like I'm contacting libraries and schools that are doing presentations and stuff. And one of the things that I've adhered to is that I have a standard quote for every system. I do not, raise it up if I know I'm calling in more expensive plays. I don't lower it, to try and like weasel in on like a place that is kind of poor. Because I know that at the end of the day, that if you do anything bad in this kind of industry, it comes back to bite you. And when it does, if you lose your reputation, that's pretty much all you have. Especially in a consumer-driven or, like for my case, like an education-driven market. Like, if word gets out that I am, shortchanging people, I'm lying, or anything like that, I'm done. Like, there's nothing else you can really do in that regard. And it's, as we say, like bringing this back to the mobile market, it's that same thing. Once people realize that your game is a scam or it's pay to win or anything like that, there goes your whole audience. Who wants to play a game that they know is 100% rigged against them?
Exactly. And it's sad because like right now, like we've had like streamers and influencers play our game. One in like sent like a video, or I watched a video, and they were playing, and like in the comments, Like they knew it was mobile. It was in another language. I had to like translate, but it was like they were making fun of like the game because they thought it might have mobile IAP. They're like, oh yeah, we'll have multiplayer later, probably a $5 DLC. It's like I can't even blame them. That's the saddest thing. I cannot blame them because that's what a mobile game at this rate means. And I had to get past this really big hurdle first before I can actually go on with good stuff.
Yeah. And like it was same thing when I was playing it on stream as well. For the people watching, like we did a play of the game on stream, then I took that footage and turned it into the video. And while I was playing that, like the first thing that popped in my head was, is this going to be just another bog standard mobile game? Like, am I going again? I even says, I think Shark, you can. I think you were watching this. At one point, I said like with the blacksmith, and I go, this seems like it could just be used for timers, like a pay or wait system right here. And again, like you said, like this is kind of what has driven a lot of people away from mobile games. I spoke with a developer. I think his name was Rahul Sagal. He was doing the game. I think he's from Roach Interactive. He did the game, I think, Child of Light. And I remember this conversation that we had, and how the game was originally pitched for mobile, and then he got all this feedback from the publisher, like wanting to change the game, and they didn't want to have a female character. They wanted to put more in-app purchases, and so what he decided to do was he took the mobile version, then he turned it to make it primarily a PC version, and he was going to port the PC version back to mobile at the end of it. And again, like it's that case of like you'll hear like from a lot of people, like, and it's the same thing I think with the independent space, or at least with the console and PC, that for the people who succeed, I mean truly and overwhelmingly succeed, your Stardew Valleys, Monument Valley, Five Nights at Freddy's, and so on, like there's no real problem for them. Like they've made it, but it's another story for the smaller games. And again, like for every Clash of Clans has succeeded, how many dozens, or if not hundreds at this point, mobile games have just failed trying to, again, break the mold in terms of what people expect out of mobile games?
Yup, it's pretty much like you make one popular game, it's going to be cloned hundreds, thousands of times.
Your Flappy
And
Birds.
oh my god,
I
and that's
bet.
what the market is. Like if there was, and here we are on the other side. It's like arguing against curation. For most of it, for Steam, it's pretty open. And really, what mobile needs to do is bring up their standards. I think it requires government interaction. I know the developers, the publishers, no way they're going to change on their own. Like, it's obvious they're dipping the deepest they can. If they're like, we're at a pretty bad state now, and it's just going to keep going down. If there's another tactic that's even worse than loot boxes, it's going to be brought up. It's going to be exploited to the maximum it can.
Yeah, and like that's the point right there, Justin. It's like something that I've been thinking about a lot. Like for people who've watched Game Wisdom and my regulars, I am 100% developer first, consumer second kind of person. I always try to put faith in the developer above all else. But even with that said, like it gets to that point of if the developer, if it's an old saying that I've heard, if you give somebody enough rope, they're going to hang themselves, kind of thing. That if the developers are just continuing down this road, like if they're not going to stop, somebody is eventually going to pull the brake. And if it's not going to come from the people making the games, it's got to come from somebody else. And this was a discussion that Ramin and I had when the whole discussion about the loot box bill. I'm sure you probably heard about that. You were reading about that. I think that came about a few months ago when there was regulations or plans to have something in place. And when we were talking about that, like Ramin said, like very eloquently, that if this goes through in that state, mobile gaming as it stands is dead. Because not one game would be able to pass their qualifiers. And I want to talk more about kind of like making a game that earns money. But we'll come back to that in a few minutes. But with this topic about what's going to happen, and it's the same thing with Steam. As we were saying earlier about the French regulations about allowing Steam keys to be bought and sold. Like, on one hand, that is going to hurt a lot of developers. It's going to hurt Steam. But it's still helping the consumer. And that, I think, has always been this kind of issue with the mobile game market, is that it's kind of become, consumer versus developer. Something great for the developer is screwing the consumer. And then, vice versa.
Yeah, so for this, I would love to find a middle ground.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but on either side, I think it can go too far. Like, in the end, if you just go 100% consumer, they just want free games, no IP, no purchase ever.
Yeah.
If you go with just developer, they want millions and millions and millions of dollars by every single player they can have.
Mm-hmm.
It needs like boundaries. Obviously, if the game is free, the developers can't even function to make more games. So I think that becomes a dead market if we try that route. So that's not even there. For developers, you go like way too expensive, and you use it in sneaky tactics. It's unfortunately working right now. It's happening.
Yeah, and
Like we do need an outside intervention to keep us on track. And the part you said about the loot boxes, I don't. The market's not dead. Like the mobile market existed before loot boxes. Loot boxes became popular several years into it already. Like all of our bubble shooters, top 50 charts. That means several hundred thousands a day, millions a month. That was with zero loot boxes. That was simply with the impulse purchase of a second chance at the end of the level. That's Candy Crush Saga stuff. Like you don't need loot boxes to exploit your players, and I fear that a bill only on loot boxes, it just leaves it open for the rest of the market to just jump to a different strategy. It's still going to be effective, not as much, but they're still going to make way more than if they go to like AAA games again.
Yeah. And I think what you just said there is another very fascinating point. I know this is one that I spoke with Ramin about kind of like that change or that shift in mobile markets and the monetization strategies. As we said earlier, like for a lot of the mobile games, again, like 2012 to maybe like, I want to say 2014, 2015, maybe somewhere around there, the major form of monetization was the idea of the quote-unquote fun pain, pay or wait, energy, timers. What you said earlier, like the insert money to continue strategies. And those worked but they were still kind of viewed, again, as being against the consumer. And then the loot boxes came. Or, I'm sorry, EA has described it, the surprise mechanics.
Surprise shenanigans.
Yeah, which now my internet's going to get cut out as I said that. And again, like, it's always been that issue, and there again, like, I'm resisting all the topics, and we already have the drinking game in chat. Every time I say that another topic, I add 2 hours in. But we've always seen developers, again, chase after what's popular, and more importantly, what's profitable. Like you said a minute ago, there's a reason why loot boxes are in games or mobile games, and why they've spread their ways or spread it into AAA, because they work. And I said this on the when I did my video about Apple Arcade and metrics-driven design, that this stuff is not done by accident. The developers aren't stupid. This is not just someone saying, "Oh, why did they put a loot box?" and they're just being silly. No, there is hard science and facts about what this means, about how this affects people from a psychological point of view. And as I'm sure you were told as you were working with your games, like, you can do this in a way that, just gives the player enough value to then pull the rug out from underneath them. It's the same thing with a lot of the mobile games that I've played, and I'm sure for the audience, that you've seen this, that, you play the game, the first 10 minutes, the amazing, it's great, you'll get your loot box, and, oh my god, you got this epic, amazing item. I'm sure you'll get that in every loot box you'll open. Now give us $5.99 for the next one. And
Yep.
it's all done to manipulate the player. And like you said, it's that line of, pro developer is anti consumer, pro consumer is anti developer. There has to be a middle ground there.
Right, and I've actually tried thinking about this. My my middle ground, if you have to do free to play, if you have to do microtransactions, I've heard a comment in on Reddit about this post. Someone else said this as well, but maximum, like, government or store maximum amount a single player can purchase within your game. Kill off whales, kill off total exploitation. This will not save it from players being able to jump to different games and be exploited, like, to a certain amount. But, like, if your game is not worth like $1 million, please stop trying to exploit players to make that $1 million off of like a single player. For us, like, we had a single. Our biggest whale was like somewhere in the several thousands on a simple bubble shooter worth at max $3. This person, like, the company looked into them. They were low to mid income. They were most likely in debt. It was not like that. That's the thing that woke me up. Like, before, it was like, oh yeah, we're just getting money from rich people. We're just maximizing how much we make off rich people. The market is not that. You are exploiting the same poor people as you are the rich people. Like, you are awful. There's no other way around to say that. Games need to have a maximum cap that they can be spent. There is no reason that it should be an open gambling addiction. The player does not win from it.
Yeah.
And even if they did, that would have to be calculated into the gambling category, which is 18 plus, whatever regulations they need to go through.
Yeah.
Instead, like, if you want to do free to play, you just maximum amount. That's the most respectable way I could think about it. I would love to hear more opinions. I would love to have someone figure it out, but I really, really hope either the government steps in with that, or the Apple, Google Play, Steam, all of the major storefronts come together, which I don't trust, but that's what I would like as well. There needs to be something that stops a player from hurting themselves when your behavior is already exploitative.
Yeah. And like you said, like, it is pure addiction, as a guard robe said in chat. Like, the games that are working, they are affecting people just as the casinos are. And like, that has always been like one of the reasons why I don't like, I've never been a fan of gambling mechanics, been a gambler. I have family members who are gamblers, and like, I've seen that, firsthand, in terms of how much money gets spent there. Like, when I visited them in Las Vegas several years, like, that whole culture is just despicable for me there. And again, the big issue though is that for gambling, they have a regulatory committee. They have, an entire organization designed, and their whole purpose is to keep gambling for 18 plus. So, it's for the people who who are old enough to understand that. For mobile games, or for games in general, it's the opposite. It's aimed at people who don't understand, what a gotcha system is, or what a loot box can do to you. And unfortunately, as we've said, it works. And it's going to take a lot to get away from that. And in that regard, it is probably going to destroy some mobile companies, if, to try and make things better in that regard.
I would never doubt the capacity and capability of mobile companies to just adapt to the market to do another exploitative method instead. The second chance purchases absolutely worked. That's where they'll go. Loot boxes is its own behavior addiction exploitation, but so was the impulse purchases of second chance.
Yep.
It might be a smaller demographic there, and that's why it wasn't so big. That's why players aren't seeing it and complaining about that. But really, we need the government to step in as a whole on all of the exploitation, because the whole thing is disgusting. But I also don't trust the governments. Only few countries do, and then most of the countries that have any standards to stop them, the developers work on some workaround because their rules aren't good and they aren't punished. Like
Mhm.
Blizzard in China. China had a rule that you can't sell loot boxes. You know what they did? They sold one coin with a loot box, and they got around that. Other ones
Mm.
are you can't sell gambling or RNG items. They sell a loot box with what you already know what's in it. Of course, you don't know what's in the next one. That's the next workaround.
Mhm.
We cannot. It's going to be some loop, like endless loop. We have to stop it at its core. Stop the
Mhm.
maximum spend per game. Be done. I wish there was more to stop exploitation. If
Mhm.
someone else could spend like genius time to really bring up this brilliant plan for it, we
Mhm.
need it. I would be 100% behind backing it.
Yeah.
I wish the industry would be better.
And I remember when I was doing research for the arcade industry, and I looked at the pachinko market in Japan, and they did something very similar as well. That gambling is against the law in Japan. So what they did was you can't turn in your pachinko balls or whatever in the parlor because that would be considered gambling. But there just so happens to be what's that term that you can turn it in and get your money. They have those booths, in every corner next to a pachinko
Mm-hmm.
parlor, and it's just outside of it, and it's not the same parlor, but they'll just so happen to take those balls and they'll
Mm-hmm.
give you money, and that's how they get around that. And like you said, like it's that same issue that you know if there is any inch in terms of exploiting the player or earning more money, they're going to find if there's like a sliver of a way to do that, it's going to be found out. And again, like we're sitting here in October of 2019 for people watching this recorded. If the loot box law does go into effect, if there is anything that's done to push away some of the more predatory practices, chances are somebody will come up with something else. As a really good example, a few years ago, there was a whole lot of blowback about, I think it was either Activision or EA, putting the trademark on a mechanic that they would purposely matchmake people who didn't pay money with people who did spend money on additional options. Again, to motivate them to spend money because if you're the only guy with the wimpy pistol on a team of everyone who's bought the pay to win a super assault rifle, well, you're going to be peer pressure into doing that. And again, it's that case of yes, we call them out on it, but that doesn't mean anything. They can still do that. And like we said earlier, once that thought gets put into your head that somebody's manipulating the matchmaking system, that's all you're going to think about. I know with the games Ramin worked on, with like World of Tanks, World of Ships, and a few of the other ones, like he mentioned that very same issue of once like there's so many little things you can do to get money out of the player that again, if you're a pro developer or pro money, why wouldn't you do it? If it works, why not do it?
It's even worse than why not do it. It's required for public companies. If you're the top person, I'm not sure who'd be running as CEO, and you're a popular voted in because
Mm-hmm.
you're a public company, you are required to maximize the profits of your company. That means you have to exploit as best you can. And that is the whole system. If that person gets fired for whatever reason, there's just going to be another, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just gonna repeat. Once you hit that part, you're in. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's your company is now that. You
Mm-hmm.
cannot switch targets. Your company is now going down that path. It's scary. There's a lot more than just the government. Because I don't trust governments either. There's steps into that have money, focus lobbying, all that. It's this huge problem that like with bugs, you want to stop things at the core. You don't go and fix like the
Mm-hmm.
very like front part of that bug, like, oh, this has like a visual glitch, and you just fix like the visual glitch to be better. You fix what's causing that
Yep.
visual glitch. And with our whole system as governments in most countries, it's also the same problem. Like, and you can't just flip to the other side of the government and just be like, oh, let's do it a different way. You have to actually. I don't think there's anything that's built designed like we actually need something, a system that's just so many people worked on it so many years with all the right intentions, and everybody looks at it openly, and this thing becomes like an actual document that we could actually work in like in a good system. But it's so doubtful anything like that could happen. I don't have, I personally don't have faith in anything fixing itself.
Yeah.
Governments aren't going to be like, oh yeah, we're making so much money from like lobbying and all that, we're just going to stop, we're going to become better. Or developers, no, they're not. No one becomes better just by themselves. You have to have something driving that force.
Yeah. And on the consumer side of things, a lot of them don't quite understand kind of the ramifications of all this. They just see it as either game adds loot boxes or game is just too damn expensive. And it's very hard to educate people about, why this stuff is bad, but beyond that, what is the alternative? And it's just very much of a lose-lose proposition for a lot of people. Like, as we said earlier with the mobile games, like, how many people are going to sadly look at Bound by Blades and the first thought they're going to think is, this is a pay-to-win, POS, crappy mobile game. I'm not even going to give it the time of day. Just like on Steam, like how many consumers have, I know Shark is ready for this one, how many consumers have completely ignored any game that has the Unity logo, thinking Unity is just, the shovelware of games, no good game is ever made on Unity, kind of thing.
That's actually funny. We built our game on Unity, and I bought the $300 license just to not show it for our Kickstarter. So there's definitely a lot of negativity all around. In fact, I do honestly believe that if we were to redo our Kickstarter and we did not ever mention mobile, we would probably be doing much better. We're still doing well, but like that difference of having the word mobile, it sends everybody this awful message. Like, even to me, I feel the same as a player. I actually feel the exact same. I hear something's mobile, that it probably means it's full of microtransactions, awful business practices. It's going to be a terrible game, full of bugs, cheap, low quality, all of the issues. We have to, we relied on building this demo to prove that it's a high quality game. We had to show it, we had to do a lot of work to make sure that there's lots of promise behind it, but it still doesn't matter. Players aren't going to even try the demo. They first see oh no, I see iOS tier, let me get out of here, this is a joke. It's actually pretty harsh, but I believe in the way we still did it. I must do honesty first, up front. The design was originally for mobile. I made it. I believe myself that I made it really good on PC because I'm a PC player and I wanted to play on PC. But we have that first hurdle. We have to get over it. That first hurdle sets our company up for success. It says, hey, these guys did something crazy, and they didn't screw you over. We're going to be good from the next time over. This time, it's we have no faith. And I trust people's, I don't try to convince people to trust me, because the next guy could come along and say the same things I do. And without that proof behind me, I can't do anything. That's what we hope the demo can help give you, that trust. But we still can't. And then there's the trust behind Kickstarter projects itself. And that has a lot of fails, scams. So it's a double whammy right there. It's a very, very difficult process.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it's one that it's just very hard to get around. I mean, it's the same thing for me with what I do with Game Wisdom and all the stuff. I can be trustworthy, and somebody can say the exact same things as I can and do everything, under the table, and then that kills my credibility.
Yeah.
Like with a lot of the libraries that I've called, like I tell them I'm on YouTube, and then the few of them who are a little bit more like technologically enabled, they'll say, "Is it okay to look at your stuff on YouTube?" Because they know, what other people on YouTube gaming talk about, or, the crazy, all that kind of nastiness that's over there. And I have to assure them that no, I'm not like that. But the very fact that I have to do that
Hmm.
is once again another hurdle that I have to jump over. Because if I don't say anything, the first thing they're going to think of, I talk about video games on YouTube, so I just must be like all those other people who just yell and scream and say things, have quote unquote gamer moments on Twitch and things like that. And unfortunately, like, it's one of those cases where you can't really do anything about other than you have to just keep yourself to that higher standard. And as you said, once you're over that hurdle and people know and they come to respect you, then that's basically eternal as long as you don't screw it up on your end.
Exactly, and I think this jumps back to GOG. It's the slow grind. We have to go through the slow
Mm-hmm.
grind to build that trust slowly. And honestly, they could easily. Well, I don't know if they have. They probably have the money, but they could buy exclusivity. They could go for it, and they even released Witcher 3 outside of their own platform instead. Um, I think it's like no, not Witcher 3, but Cyberpunk. Like they released outside their platform to not do exclusive. I think they tried it on a Gwent game and it didn't work, so I don't know what to say on that part. It could be a little bit bad, but mm, I there's some steps. If it wasn't their own game, I would be against it. It was their own game, so I'm not against it. But so far to me, I trust them. They're earning my trust. If I see something on their store the same as Steam, I'm now almost like 50-50 on buying it. Like
Mm-hmm.
Steam, I have like the huge library. If I get the launcher on GOG and it just has all my games, it's like GOG is also doing better business practices than even Steam. It's
Mm-hmm.
like why don't I just buy on GOG? I have this one singular launcher now. Why don't I just go to their store because I trust what they're doing? And I honestly will. Like they're winning me over. And I see myself as a player, so slowly, they keep releasing
Mm-hmm.
good games, no cruddy tactics. I do think they'll slowly build enough of an audience to become a competitor. And it's the
Mm-hmm.
same with us. We have to take that slow grind. Like if we fail on Kickstarter, we have to take the slow grind. We have to burn, like keep going, have
Yep.
to get more funds, like work slowly to build out this game and then release it. It might not even be like a huge like success. I don't expect like us to have like massive marketing, but I do believe in the quality of the game, what the game will be. I believe player feedback. It's multiplayer, so it'll also have players talking to each other like, hey, play this game. It's actually awesome. It's a mobile game that's actually awesome. It's
Mm-hmm.
fun. Or if you have like what my idea is like something really cool with it is like you're playing on PC. It's like, oh man, I have this awesome game. Oh, it's a cross-platform multiplayer, and they're on Android and they have like an Android phone. It's like, hey, Jude, just buy this game. It's like we can play right now, and
Mm-hmm.
then they do. We have it's like this awesome thing just all around.
Yep.
But I have to finish the game even without the fun somehow. It's that slow build. If it takes me 10 years, that's what it takes. We
Yep.
cannot take the jump that easy promise to make the studio a success at the start because it first of all it kills my own motivation.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the whole reason I started on this game was to escape all of that. So it's just that slow build. I'd rather take the slow build and say no to every single thing I don't believe in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now, and then like this is like the issue that I have like when we talk about this kind of stuff is that we've sadly seen developers who have done the up and up of put their paces in and they still have trouble and they still go out of business. And it, like, as somebody who covers games and talks to so many developers, it always frustrates me when I see that. Like Deviant Development, the ones who made Hand of Fate, they went out of business or they're ceasing production, I think, a few months ago. And this is, again, like, this is that problem. I think this is a good segue into this next topic. And as a quick time check before we get to that, we are just over an hour in. We were aiming for a short a soft stop point, about an hour and a half to 2 hours, so we still have time for any questions from the chat. But this has always been that big issue, and something that we were mentioning earlier about ethical monetization is that, as we said, if you're 100% developer, then you're screwing the consumer. If you're 100% consumer, then you're not really going to be able to earn enough money in a lot of cases to keep going. And the problem, or the major point, is, what is the middle ground there? What is considered fair for everybody? And I want to get your thoughts on this, again, with what you're doing with Bound by Blades. And as we've said, you've seen things on the 100% developer side. So, I mean, how do you figure out, I need to earn money, but I don't want to screw my players at the same time?
It's premium purchase as your only option. I also believe in like full loaded expansions, the old ones from like MMOs where you actually worked years on this content, not DLC. Let me clarify that, not DLC. DLC is like usually, oh, we spent some months on this, even during the development, so we could sell this later. Not that at all. The big expansions where you get like another freaking year of content to keep playing.
A $34 expansion, essentially.
Exactly, stuff like that. It can be like smaller stuff for smaller games. If we, I don't want to do any expansions for BBB. I would rather only like rely on the main funding of the premium purchase. If we have enough funds, continue like out this nice development for it, just with no cost. If we don't, then we like work a nice segue into our next game so we can fund for that instead, and keep going with like our game as a whole. But premium purchase is what I trust. Like one single premium purchase is all I want. If like I'm afraid to look at free-to-play games, it's like I don't want to be advertised in. I don't want to worry about my data being sold. I don't want to feel like there's something behind it. I want to feel like I purchased this product and it's mine. It's my game. It's like there might be DRM. I'm not. I like lots of people fear the DRM. I can understand their point. I don't see it myself, so we're not going to build any DRM because we don't have any reason to. It's like you just try to give players what they want and price your game at a rate that's fair. For us, our Kickstarter is $15 for Steam, but on the final store we're going to go for $20. Like $20 I feel is a fair quality for the multiplayer, the end game content with a lot of replay, 3 characters, all of that stuff. It's like if I'm a player, I want at least like $1 per hour. I've heard that a lot. It's like I kind of agree with that to a certain extent. Amazing games can be shorter. Oh, I'm good with that. But if your game is like meant for like replay, you want at least like a good chunk of replay with lots to extend past it if you really like the game. A game that I really want to play into, it's like I want to keep playing. I've bought Monster Hunter $60. I bought that twice, PS4 and PC. I loved it. Like I bought it once. It does have like microtransactions to a small degree, which I don't know how much is worth or anything behind it, but it's like to me it feels like a premium purchase, and that's what I want in games I make and what games that I want to buy. I don't want to play free-to-play games, really.
Yeah. And I think, like, with that regard, or with, like, again, the idea of a premium purchase versus the free-to-play, I mean, we of course have to bring up what a lot of people consider to be kind of the gold standard, Warframe, in terms of their monetization model and what they've done over the years. And getting back to a point we said earlier regarding whales, there was a story, I think, earlier this year with them actually removing a feature because they saw that was attracting whales to their games, or whales to the game. And again, Warframe is just like, it's such like the outlier in terms of the free-to-play market that, you know, like, it's just amazing what they've done. And, like, that's the weird thing. Like, all the elements that are in, like, the free-to-play market, or what we say in terms of bad monetization, is in some way, shape, or form in Warframe. I don't know if they have loot boxes. I'm not sure they add that in after I play, but they have timers on events. They have the whole monetization store. But you know they've figured out a way to do that without pissing off their consumers. And it's just fascinating how they've managed to do that over these last few years, especially, again, considering the initial reception of how bad that game, or how bad it was, for the first month or first year. Nobody would touch that game. And now, here we are now, and they have their, the annual TemoCon, or whatever it's called.
Yeah, so it's basically the same as like looking into a mobile game. It's like there are the outliers, and you need to have those people like be able to be built up and bring more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like for Warframe, I think they have like timers and stuff, but as long as it's not exploitative, I didn't know about them stopping something for the whale practice. That is actually honorable. I
Mm-hmm.
respect them greatly for that. Like that's the top cap that I was talking about. If you're gonna maximize single purchase from a single player, you don't need your players spending like thousands of dollars. You shouldn't be aiming for that either.
Yeah.
It's sad. You should find a value upon your game per year or something that you think is worth for a player to play, like an honest price, like maybe $60, $100 if it's a full on like
Mm-hmm.
keep throwing out content, and that's like the maximum they can spend, and they have everything they want. Like they aren't
Mm-hmm.
limited from making those purchases, or they can just have them free because they spent them out. So it's more
Mm-hmm.
like an on or off kind of, like a purchase to have everything. In my term, I prefer like a full single purchase. If you have free to play, if we had to make BBB free to play, a single full unlocked purchase would be the way we'd want to go. No in-game purchases, no being able to purchase more. That's the most respectable free to play to me. Warframe found a good model in between,
Mm-hmm.
and as long as they're not exploiting people and they're against that, that's good.
Yeah. And Oscar and Chad brought up Path of Exile, and they're another really good example. Like, for them, everything gameplay related, except with exception to their the number of stash you have, is entirely free for the player. They release a new expansion, they release a new league, that's 100% free.
Yeah.
Everything, and I do mean everything, cosmetic or personalization, that's microtransaction. And it's such, like, again, like when you hear that in your head, it sounds horrible. Everything that you could ever want personalization wise has a microtransaction fee to it. But then again, gameplay is 100%. It's not touched by it. It's unblemished. And again, it's always about that balance between the two.
So for my take on that is why be so against letting your players earn some in-game currency if they play enough, kill enough like
Mm-hmm.
cool bosses, hard bosses, and they're loyal players? Because in our old bubble shooters we made, one of the sayings was you don't want to kill off your loyal players either. Even though
Mm-hmm.
Path doesn't kill off their players, it's like why can't you just give something for like your honest loyal players to have a little
Mm-hmm.
bit of currency to pay for? And then the second take would be how much exploitation is behind the scenes. I've heard, like, I've had a friend who mentioned his friend that purchased all of the League of Legends skins. It's like it's still too open. Even if the gameplay is there, I think allowing like that unlimited amount at the top end is it's still
Eh.
too open. I want there to be like a maximum cap. I want there like not to stop the players from being able to own that content. They should have that content for that maximum cap, but just stop trying to like maximize off of the player.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that's another very big point about what elements can be monetized. Because one of the most popular defenses have been cosmetics. Don't affect gameplay. We can have every hat. Every 50 different colors of hats, each one having their own different pricing scheme, and it's fine because it's not affecting the gameplay. But we've certainly have seen, I think I spoke with Ramin about this, I know there's been other studies shown that those personalization options do matter to somebody. Again, being able to make something that is uniquely you. As a guard robe said, like, it affects people being able to make. Whoa, my voice is dying. That's always a good slash bad sign. But it affects people because that's how you're being viewed in the game. Again, as Oscar was saying in chat, the social pressure. Why should you
Exactly.
wear the common dregs of robes, and you can be that character. I think Mojo says when we're playing Path of Exile, he's like, those two people are on fire in the in the lobby. Yeah, they paid extra for the set yourself on fire cosmetic option. And again, and I think this is again another big point we need to clarify for everyone watching. And I know my regulars have heard this. What we're talking about, it doesn't affect us. Like, we've seen, yeah, like, we've seen behind the curtain. We know how these loot boxes operate. We know what energy systems represent in cosmetics. Like, it doesn't affect us. But as we said, for that 1% or for the whales, the people who have that addictive personality, it's affecting them. And this is why we have to have these discussions. That even though, like, for the people who are in the know, it's the same with gambling. The people who understand how slot machines work or how the rules of probability work, they're not bothered by this. But when you have people who spend 10 to 15 hours in the casino pulling a slot machine, they're not thinking about that. They're thinking about that next hit. And
Hmm.
that's where this issue comes into play at.
Yep. For me personally, I like to. I don't have the addiction personality, but like when a game limits the cosmetics completely,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no way I can like play enough of the game where I have fun, and it's like, oh, I can buy like this cosmetic, but then it's like, oh, I just get this one cosmetic and I have to purchase for every single other one. Oh, there was a cool one that came out. I
Mm-hmm.
can't earn in-game currency to purchase that in any
Yeah.
way. It feels like I'm just going to be monetized all the same. It doesn't feel good to me. It feels like it's still there to exploit me. So I don't even play them. Like it becomes like going into Overwatch. They unfortunately they exploit using the loot boxes, but they also have the currency.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do on that is like for me, I played for a long time, so I had endless currency to keep purchasing for free whatever cosmetics I wanted. But their market was the new players who don't have the time, the people who are like,
Mm-hmm.
oh no, I don't. I only have so many hours a day, and they're like, I got to get this thing, and they buy hundreds of loot boxes because they can't even buy the item itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's still exploitive.
Yeah.
It's I do wish there was like a nice like in-game currency limit and a maximum purchase per game. Like I think that's the best I can stand by. I hope there's better ideas by others,
Yeah.
but
And I agree with you about allowing the player to earn premium currency. Again, we're not talking about them earning $500 of premium currency in a day. But like you said, like if you do like the super hard event, or let's say once a week there's a tough battle, give them $1 or two of premium currency. Like we've said, like I know I've told with Ramin about this, that the big point is that you want to convince somebody that there's value in your game. And I know he said, I think most people don't spend money until they hit, I think, like the 15-day, or there's like 15 to 20 days of playing the game before they consider that they put enough value in to spend that money. So, again, if you're hitting the player with hundreds of dollars of microtransactions from day one, they're not going to do a damn thing about this. And it's very hard, again, to try and convince people otherwise. I think those are one of the things I respected about EVE Online and Second Life. That both games have premium currency or in-game currency, but it's transferable. Like if I spend $10 to buy something in EVE Online, or $10 to buy currency, I could take that money at some point and pull it out of the game, and I have my $10 back. I know, again, like I always bring Ramin up about this. Like he told me about how he made all his money, buying and selling stuff in EVE Online and EverQuest back in the day. Like he earned like so much money playing those games. They had to ban his account
um,
because he did so well in them. And like
oh my god.
it's that crazy idea. And again, like, bring this back to this idea of pro-consumer versus pro-developer. One of the main reasons developers don't want to do that is that they're going to lose money. But ultimately, it's a net positive for the consumers. And if you treat your consumers well in that regard, they're going to try and do more, or they're going to try and be more supportive of your game.
I think this one's actually hard because I don't know Eve, but I relate this closest to Diablo 3 well, not cosmetics, but actual the auction.
The auction house,
the real auction house, the real money auction house. Because I use that. I made like 1,300 from that myself. I played so much Diablo 3.
I only made like 130. Damn it. Like, everyone makes money off of these systems except for me. My friend, I have another friend who made a killing on the whole Steam trading card system. I just cannot do that.
But what it does, I think, is actually awful in the end, because it's going to have the players start exploiting other players for their own benefit. Rigging the auction houses, purchasing from one to send on the other for more money. You're creating a secondary developer step that's actually anti-consumer in the end, even though it's pro-consumer for some, and most might see it that way. It's still hitting the core base in the end. It's very interesting to talk about, because there might be a way to make it work, but I know already in auction houses there's already people like exploiting to make the most money in game. If you make it for real auction houses, people outside of games are going to be jumping into that and exploiting.
It's the very thing we saw with the rise of skin gambling and skin trading on, CS:GO, Team Fortress, etc., etc. And I mean, getting back to the whole YouTube thing, we've seen scandals of YouTubers who, they roll their own gambling systems out, telling people, and then they go, "Oh my God, the system is amazing! It's great! I win all the time," and they don't tell anyone that they're the owners and they rigged it for them. And excuse me, and like you said, when you start bringing real money in, it brings in people who aren't gamers. I know there's been a lot of talks about, black market, mafia types, stuff like that, getting into these systems because it's unregulated. Kids are spending hundreds of dollars, trying to get that super expensive skin, that knife skin on CS:GO, and there's no regulation. So why are we dealing with this heavily regulated system when we have this free one ripe for the picking?
It's disgusting. It's like that's probably one of the biggest things I have against Steam, is that they have that stuff. It's exploitative just the same as any other company. The only thing holding me back from outright straight hating them is that that's the only thing that they're doing so far. They haven't spread that. And they don't force that tactic upon developers or anyone else. So that's the only thing because if it was widespread, I mean, I already hate that they do that in the first place. I hate that any company could do that. It's not good for players. It's very awful. It's exploitative to the max. And then you were mentioning like YouTubers. That their target is directly to kids. And they're literally leading them into like the gambling market, and it might not be firsthand, but Steam knows that. Any company that does that knows that. It's despicable. If GOG ever does that, then I'll lose respect for them. But at this point, I'm hoping GOG holds an upper foot, keeps building, and I'll be supporting them soon.
And getting back to Shark's comment from earlier about the idea of capping purchases, I think that is a very tricky one, because I've seen this, like, with a few of the mobile games that I've played. Like, I was playing that Marvel Strike Force game, and I see routinely keep offering me these quote-unquote deals, $99 to get this special thing, $50 for this. And I was seeing somebody on, like, one of the chats saying, I just spent $200 on, I forget what they spent it on. And, like, I'm just sitting here with almost 2,000 Steam games in my backlog, more games coming in day to day, thinking, I couldn't even spend $30 on a game I want to play right now, let alone spend $30 on a Do we even call them microtransactions when they're like $50 plus? And
I know.
it's that issue again of where, like, how do you draw that line? Like, should a mobile game reasonably be making millions of dollars off of microtransactions?
No, it needs to be stopped. That's why I like say the max cap. It needs to there needs to be someone who's more intelligent than me that can actually come up with a solid plan that is for like a good middle ground. Your game deserves money. Like even like the bubble shooters we work on might be clones, but we still work to make them qualitative. So a few dollars, I think would be a high quality, like a good standard for a purchase, and you have all the content.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like we reach like millions of players, so that's a lot of money in the end run, and you're not screwing anyone over. You're actually selling your product premium purchase at a fair
Mm-hmm.
rate.
Yeah.
But that's not what like developers want. Like it's it's scary. It's really scary. I don't see how we can stop it. I
Mm-hmm.
really I don't think the government will do the right regulation. None of them have so far.
Yeah.
They've stopped loot boxes, but most of those games just like stop selling those because there are smaller countries that actually do that. On the other end, they do workarounds to sell in
Mm-hmm.
China and all of that.
Yeah.
Government is not, they're not equipped for this, not yet, and I don't think that they're behind them is like driving the right force either.
Mm-hmm.
It's just scary overall.
Yeah. And like we've said, like at the end of the day, if more of these laws or more of these regulations come to pass, or we have to put our foot down, it is unfortunately going to screw somebody. Somebody is going to get burned in the end, whether it's the developer, the consumers, or both in some regard. But it just can't be going. It can't stay as it is now.
Right. Like I saw one comment, we shouldn't be giving the government more power. It's so tough because we cannot rely on the
Mm-hmm.
developers, the publishers who are already maximal exploiting the
Yeah.
players. I think their comment is accurate too.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of in this big rut
Mm-hmm.
that that we're wrong. Like it's very difficult. Like
We had a similar discussion about the ESRB. Like, I'm not a fan of the ESRB myself, but they're often viewed as a necessary evil for being able to do these games. Because could you really trust developers who write their game right to put accurate descriptions? And again, like, this is where the cynic in me comes to life. That I do believe that the majority of the developers are honest and trustworthy. That they're not making games to screw the player. But it's always the bad apples who then set the stage for everybody else. And like we said earlier, with like credibility, that if somebody does something bad, it then gets thrown onto you because you may be doing something similar but doing it right.
yep, it truly drives the whole market, and if you're not doing it, you're going to be just lost in a crowd, and
Mm-hmm.
you're probably going to be losing like views and money because you're not doing like the evil tactics that actually gain like more players and money. I want to also touch on some comments about whales, like whales and consumer choice parenting. It doesn't go to that. You have to understand it's not just kids. Um, Whales are being exploited. They do not. They have a behavior problem that lets them be
Mm-hmm.
exploited, and games are maximizing on that.
Yeah.
They are not capable to like be able to bring themselves. It's an actual mental issue, and that's what these developers are relying on. They're preying on it. Like people older like bubble shooters were targeted older ladies. Our biggest whale was the low income and over thousands of dollars on a single bubble shooter. They're not capable. It's an actual mental illness that is being preyed on, and that's what we're at. Um, Children are probably into it, but it like even without children, you're still in the same market. you can rate these games 18 plus. I still think it's still going to have that market to exploit people.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to have children in it. I don't think marketing it 18 plus is going to save it from being in all of our games. Even if you market a lot of the games up, you'll have some that have for kids and stuff under, but I don't think that's going to solve the market. And then back to the ESRB that you're mentioning, there was that recent horrible tactic, the NBA 18, the new one, with gambling machines. Their actual trailer was
Mm-hmm.
all of these gambling machines. They were
Mm-hmm.
rated like 3 plus. And then someone mentioned the Pokemon gambling casino game inside of it, which is just like to get like a Pokeball or something. That was 13 plus because it had a casino game in it.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the SRB cannot be trusted either.
Yeah.
We're literally at a full standpoint that the system overall is not helping us. There,
Mm-hmm.
we have to have something that saves us. I am not
Mm-hmm.
smart enough to figure that one out though.
Yeah. And that's the crazy thing of the ESRB is that they have a rating to warn people about gambling systems or that there's gambling elements. I know they have one for drinking, like the consumption of alcoholic beverages, but the game can still be rated E or
Mm-hmm.
whatever the Peggy version of that as well. And again, like it's that issue of who's going to be able to take care, who's going to be able to solve this, and what is that actually going to entail?
That's that's the question we're at because I think even outside of games, like as more companies, more public companies are opening in different fields, that it's happening across the world in other states as well. You hear about like the pills being sold for maximum profit, even though these are necessary for lives.
Mm-hmm.
You hear, I don't know if I have any more good ideas in that regard for comments, but
Mm-hmm.
I think that with like the way our whole system is set up, we're going to keep diving down all around. Like we're just seeing like the first few steps now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And and like we said earlier, in a very cynical way, like if somebody comes out and completely destroys loot boxes, let's say the law comes out, it destroys the whole loot box market, we can just move on to the next thing. Or we may have loot box 2.0. And I know when I spoke to Rami about this, like the companies they hire, like the very best in the the very best in the gaming industry and stuff like that. Like they know the workarounds. They know how to wheel and deal. And again, as we said earlier, like this is I think the thing a lot of people, or at least a lot of consumer sites, don't understand. Like when you see people ranting on YouTube about how dare they put loot boxes in or pair weight mechanics, and they're calling them stupid or idiots, this is not done out of stupidity. This is not done by mistakes. This is done heavily practiced and refined to get people to spend money. And if you don't view it like that, if you just view it as a developer being dumb, then you're not really helping the situation.
Yep. It's not even just that they're doing it, but they're they're doing it to exploit the players with behaviors to the maximum they can, and that's I can't believe like that governments are taking so long to stop this, that the system hasn't been stopped ahead of time. Um, the systems are rigged, and going back to the ESRB, the companies themselves are part of the ESRB. It's not just some separate branch. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually members of like the for the NBA game. A member of their company was actually in it in the
Mm-hmm.
ESRB rating for them. So it's we're in a very disgusting market. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how to solve this, but there needs to be an answer that
Yeah.
hits so high that it actually starts solving things.
Yeah. And the chat is talking about like horse armor and microtransactions, and like that's another topic in and of itself about what is the actual value of this stuff. And this has been, I think, one of the major points I spoke with Ramin about. That, you know, the problem that a lot of these microtransactions have is that the developers are setting the price and the value for it. It's essentially like it's essentially the casinos. They're setting the price for you to gamble, and they're saying how much you can actually win. Why is one game's fancy hat worth $7.99, and another game you can buy shoes for $15? Like everybody is trying to essentially be the house of their own respective game, and it just can't work like that.
Yep, and to go further into that, that's why I think the maximum purchase is the best option. Because if you set, we can't, there's no way to say like a cute 2D game hat to a 3D really well rendered game, same price. But you can start doing like if it's a mobile game and it's like something cheaper of value, like the total value is like $10, you can start maximizing with a lower price. If you have a AAA game that clearly has like a lot more money put into it, you can go with like a higher maximum value, but you still need that maximum value. Um, Going into the player controlled, don't they're still going to be exploited. I'll talk to you about one of the, not our company, we didn't work on this game, but one of the publishers mentioned from another game. They did a dress up game. They had, this is actually pretty scary because this is what happens when you let players go all alone. This might be related to partial whales that are rich. I do not know what their demographic for, if there were exploitative behaviors for impulse purchase or anything. But what this company did was they sold dresses, dress ups, all that kind of stuff. But they sold a singular dress that was like a really sparkly one for I think $10. They increased the price. People bought it. They increased the price to $100. People bought it. They increased the price to $1,000. People bought it. They increased the price to $10,000, and people bought it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very scary world. We're not in a place that's going to stop these on its own. We have to have people. It has to be more community driven. Like this, a lot of my building for BBB is even more into the marketing, like to be against that stuff because it's more my drive to stop that. BBB is one game. Stopping this practices, stopping exploitative behavior, is stuff I want, even if it's not like a driving factor behind BBB. It's something I want as a player because I hate seeing it. It hurts me. Though it's disgusting. It's very disgusting. The people doing this are awful to themselves. The publishers screw over their own companies. They will lay off people just to hire. They'll make millions. They'll lay off their own people of high quality standard and just go for outsourcing very cheap. They've even like some analytics we've seen of some people, what they did in their own company. They make like a lot of money, but somehow claim that they spent more on ads every single day than like the hundreds of thousands they actually made. And that was like, how is that possible? You'd be in the debt. So they're screwing over either their own company. If people had like a revenue share or something, they'd be screwing over them. They'd be screwing over other people. I've been lied to in the face by a publisher as like an early in my career when my boss told me like differently. It's like, yeah, that didn't happen. That's not true. Like the people in charge are truly disgusting animals. Like we have to, I'm hoping to open the world to hearing like this. They need to understand that predatory tactics are not for just children. They're hitting everybody. They're hitting like illnesses. Like it's not okay that they exist in any form. There has to be stopgaps. There has to be like whole gaps that stop any exploitation at all. And that's where we really, really need to go. We need players complaining louder. That's another factor for the Epic Store that I really fear. The mobile store, you look into reviews, you see like, oh, cute game, bubble shooter, yay, very fun. But you don't get the real reviews. You don't. Those are like the top commented ones. You have to like sneak into finding the other ones, and it's all like a few words of each game, and they're all like they highlight the fancy, nice, flashy stuff. But really, it's like these are super exploitative games, and those comments are hidden at the bottom when they should be at the top. But these markets are designed to only show happiness to sell your game. And I
Mm-hmm.
believe there's too much developer and publisher control in that. They control the comments. Just like the
Mm-hmm.
rating system, you only send the positive to those
Yeah.
comments. These guys don't have like a real review system. They don't have a community. That's what I'm hoping with BBB that we can do is like, there's this good game. Why aren't other games like good like this? I'm hoping that they see this and it's like, why can't I see other good games? And they start searching online or
Yeah.
searching a forum that speaks openly about like things that warn people about these things and bring their attention to good things. That's where it goes to the Epic Games.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of their audience is young kids from Fortnite. Most of their audience is. If they grow up with like without the reviews, the forums, the rating systems that other consumers and good practice can give, they're going to be the same as the mobile market, and that's what I truly fear. It's too much developer control. It will be exploited, and that is an awful way to go. I
Mm-hmm.
I will never trust that store.
Yeah. And like your anecdote earlier about like the dress going up in price, I remember the Battlefield free to play game that came out a few years ago, and how the game was circling the drain, it was doing horribly, and then they realized they could sell guns and keep raising the value and the stats on brand new weapons. I remember reading this post. The developers they said we were shocked that our revenue went up 200% as soon as we start selling in-game weapons. I was just sitting there going, really? That shocked you? That surprised you at all? And yeah, like again, like the issue, like, and we're having this argument in chat about this, that the people who don't know any better, the people who become addicted, like we can't be targeting games explicitly to them. And the problem, or the catch 22, I'm not even sure this is a catch 22, is that the games that succeed don't succeed on the merits of just being great games in the mobile space. They succeed because of their monetization. You'll see
Mm-hmm.
news reports of so and so game had best month ever. 3 million users have subscribed. But then, as we've talked about, what happens next month? Are those 3 million people still playing and buying the game, or has that number gone down to 1 million or less than that? And
Yeah.
it's just that.
Uh,
Go ahead.
Sorry. You can finish first.
I was going to say, and again, it's that issue of just where do we draw that line as to how much money should these games be able to earn?
So for this, a lot of it is that their ad spend is crazy high.
Mm-hmm.
The games are not
Yeah.
popular because they're good. The ad spent is like 10 grand plus every single day, up to 100 grand of ads. Like it is, you are buying your market. They are doing that so they have a fan base and that can slowly grow to more. They're able to hold it up because they make so much damn money off of every single click and every single buy, and that's the scary thing. Back to the comments. The scariest thing I need to warn people about: do not ever blame the players on any of these
Mm-hmm.
monetization purposes. Um, that is what the developers will want. That's what the publishers will say. They will say that the games need more money, but if you look at the market is much bigger.
Mm-hmm.
They're making more money on the games that they are spending. Cyberpunk is going to have that. Uh, but on the other end, you have Red Dead Redemption 2 that says, "Oh, we need this because our game
Mm-hmm.
is so expensive." Cyberpunk is like the equivalent. On their end, are they going to have those things? Witcher's didn't. Huh? It did really well. Why are you blaming the players? And don't blame the players,
Uh,
please. Like it's very scary, but you have to understand the players are being exploited. It's 100% the developers' fault. The
mm-hmm.
publishers, you have to save them.
Yeah. And in Grand Theft Auto 5, they put in their own in-game casino where you can put money in, but you can't take it out. And again, like for my regulars, like we've been playing games. Oh, thank you. I only want to give virtual hugs, unfortunately. But like we've been playing games back when again like it was just a premium purchase. I spend $50, $20, $60, whatever. That's it. It's my
Mm-hmm.
game forever. And those games manage to succeed well. And like I've said this in a piece about about why game development is not magic, or about the importance of understanding what goes in a successful game. And I said that the developers who succeed in this industry, oh wait, I'm sorry, this was actually about the Deviant developers going out about why critical success isn't always like the best, but that developers who succeed, they're not making 20-30 million dollars on their games. They're not selling $15 million in advertisements. They make a game that they want, they do it in a reasonable time, they keep to their budget, and they sell the game to people who want to buy it. And like what I said there is like, duh, of course. But it's still a shock, I think, to a lot of people like who expect like their game to make Minecraft money, or that every game should be earning $20-30 million in sales, or like EA's argument that Dead Space should have made, it should have sold at least 5 million copies, or wasn't considered successful enough. And again, like, games can succeed. Monster Hunter World, I just did a piece about, it sold, I think, over 18 million copies, and is the best-selling game from Capcom. They did that without any in-game microtransactions, without any kind of scummy or predatory practices.
They do have emotes you can purchase as add-ons.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I'd hold against them. I've never even been interested in trying those. I don't know. I think they're pretty limited on how many you can buy. So, at least for exploitative measures, they are still legitimate on that end. They're very, very, like, they're not the cosmetics. Yeah. They're very minimal in the game. So it's not something I hold them too harshly against. And the fact that they don't have, at least as far as I've seen, they don't have a whole million to buy that they can exploit a single player on. Maybe like $10-20 tops of this stuff that you really have to go out of your way to even like want. Yeah. If someone did like feel like addicted to purchasing those, that would be something that we'd like to hear, to understand that even that is bad. But until we like have those voices, and like we need player voices to speak about that. Yeah. You also mentioned with Hand of Fate, like games that don't do like the exploitative business and they can fail because of that. I think that's just what the market is. If BBB fails, it's like on our end. Like we did not market it well enough. We did not build a game players truly wanted. Like that, we're the developers. It's our risk to take. It's not us to add in exploitative measures to ensure our success. That's not what developers should be doing. It needs to be you take that risk because you are the developer. You're the one building this. You're the one who's supposed to be marketing. Like you should be the one understanding your market. You should be the one saying, I really want to go this route. This is the game that will work. This is something I believe in. And you sell that out. Like that's, you sell it. You don't say, oh, let's try this game where I can get some money off of you. That's, there's a whole, there should be the risk. Like that's what the market is. It's what a good market is.
Yeah. And I think with that, we are about to hit like 2 hours into the stream. I think we can probably wrap things up. Again, there's a lot of topics we can segue into and for multiple talks. But if you're free in the future, Justin, especially after, the craziness of Kickstarter is over, we can always have you back on for another discussion.
Yeah, I really enjoy these talks. I think trying to get these words out is heavily important. I don't believe in myself to be the spokesman to help drive, but I want there to be a community of developers like I can group with, and like we build, and there's more players for us like to understand that we need to be for the players in such an aspect that we never exploit anyone. It needs to exist. So I'm definitely up for speaking more later.
Yep, no problem. And again, and I think it's kind of like the capper for our podcast. Like, this is not a problem that is going to go away tomorrow. It's not something that can be easily solved by just talking about it and being able to put this into words. But the problem again is that it is such a multifaceted topic about mobile monetization, microtransactions, you name it, that however we approach it, it's going to cause massive ramifications for the rest of this industry. And People, and I've said this before, like a lot of developers don't like to see these massive changes. They don't want to see waves being made or anything that can, upset the status quo. But again, on the other hand, as we've talked about, it's not working in this regard. Even though, we've seen like on mobile sites and mobile developers posting huge numbers and saying these games are massively successful and we're doing amazing, it's not really showing the full extent of what's going on in the mobile industry and even what's going on with the traditional industry as well. Like I've said with many independent developers I've spoken to, everybody knows what Minecraft is. They know Stardew Valley and Five Nights at Freddy's, but I have played dozens, if not hundreds, of games at this point that have been amazing that nobody's ever heard of, that have just crashed and burned. And again, like, to get these issues solved, it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take setting standards, which is not something a lot of people want to hear about when they talk about the game industry. Right now, there's of course the big push about having a game dev union, and that's another massive discussion of itself to get into.
Yep. It's definitely there's I think it's necessary to change all around. It's we're not at a good spot where we're going, and it's going to keep dipping lower and lower. There's no way exploiting players is not going to stop on its own, so it's going to keep going worse and worse as more tactics are coming in. In just how many years the loot boxes came from mobile to being hugely popularized in a lot of AAA games. It's coming fast, and this is just the latest tactic. They're going to start pushing more and more into this, and it's going to keep building. The players are the ones who drive this market, and it's hard because the players are also the ones being exploited. So it's like we have to have the players be able to group up with us to speak on their own behalf. Be like, I don't want to be in debt spending this money on a game that's not worth $10. We need to be able to have like the players be the ones grouping to come with a community that actually drives games all around. That's the driving force behind the market, but the market is also exploiting, which we need to stop from like a government or some other perspective that does not allow driving straight on illnesses. Like it's a nightmare all around. And then for just a note on the game dev union, looking back when I was looking for work, it seems like a necessity on its own as well. It's like the changes, like I don't care what the comments are. A lot of the comments for people against these things are the people who are okay with the loot box and stuff. And honestly, they can just get out of here. If their company dies, good. They're the ones screwing everyone. I don't want that. Like the game industry is in a rut because of that. Sure, it's the best game industry now because it's so much money and everybody's happy. They're happy and they're rich and they're so much more money than any crappy game that they develop should have. It's a nightmare. I think a lot of developers kind of hate me for speaking against these things because when I talk to them and they're like, "Oh, we have loot box," and it becomes really awkward. But it's like I'm not going to stop my practice. I'm not going to stop my saying. I was living that industry, and it's a freaking nightmare. You are a disgusting person for that. Like, please, players, just speak against that as much as you can. Reviews, forums, Reddits. We've already seen some companies try to change from like Reddit posts. Speak louder. Get your friends to dig into it. Get everybody to go for this. It's so important. You don't know.
Yeah, and I think that is a great capper for the cast. I know Shark is probably nodding his head right now, but it has been a fantastic time talking with you, Justin. Again, if you're free in the future, please don't hesitate to send me a message and we can have you back on. To end the cast on, I think that was already a great point, but for my regulars or new people watching, what social media can they find you at? And if you want to mention the Kickstarter now, definitely feel free.
So we're on Kickstarter now for Bound by Blades. Just to recap, we are on mobile, PC for Windows now. There is a free demo on our Kickstarter page. It's on itch.io, GameJolt, and Steam if you want to try through any of those. Um, for social media, the biggest would be our Discord, as I'm most active there. We
Mm-hmm.
have a bunch of people talking. It's great. That you can find that at discord.gg/boundbyblades. And for social media in itself, Twitter at Bound by Blades is the next biggest one. So follow us on any of those. Please help back if you're interested in the game itself.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you.
All right, that is great. And again, for those of you new who want to know more about me, you can find me on Twitter at GWBicer. We have the Discord channel linked down below, which I'm once again putting another link to there. And we're going to end things for this week's cast. Again, Justin, it was fantastic hanging out with you, and definitely best of luck with the Kickstarter for Bound by Blades. And for any developers watching us right now, if you would like to come on and talk about your games or game dev in general, we're always looking for new guests. We're going to end things here. So I'll be back later tonight for our regular game stream. We have a weekly live show Sundays around 3:30, 4 p.m. EST. And I think with that, that's all we have to say. I guess we're ending things kind of cynically, but there's always more topics for the future. So, if you wouldn't mind hanging on the call for like 30 more seconds after we wrap up, just as I have a few things to go with you.
Sure.
But